All right, parents, real quick, I'm going to discuss the third quarter project outline. What I'll go ahead and do is read through it word for word so you guys know what I'm expecting. This one is purposely simpler than the second quarter and even the first quarter one. I did so that your students can essentially do this on their own. We go through every lesson several days before we take a test, so your students should be well versed in this. But I'll go ahead and I'll read word for word the outline. I have sent each of you a link to a Dropbox or a Google Drive with the outline on there. Your student has received a copy. Unfortunately, I will not be giving your student another copy. So if they need another copy, you can either access that Dropbox or ask them to find it from a friend. Alright, so Lesson 1, Archaia, Bacteria, and Viruses. With all bullet points, a tangible creation will be required, as well as a paragraph explaining each point. Clarification will be given per point. So, number 1, demonstrate the characteristics of Prokaryotes and Eukaryotes. A diagram of each cell must be present, and complete labels of all the organelles must be present. So for that one, your student seriously needs to create a 3D model of both a eukaryotic cell and a prokaryotic cell. And all the organelles or anything that's inside those cells has to be labeled and present. So I would say no smaller than this, so like a softball. If it's any smaller, they won't be able to fill the labels, and it's really impossible to do. I can tell you, you don't have to spend a lot of money on this. If you have empty cereal boxes or boxes, period, have them use those. This can be made out of clay, Legos, basically anything, modeling clay, Play-Doh. The dollar store has dinosaurs. They have all kinds of different things. Your students can use those. So you don't have to spend an incredible amount of money on these, since you're going to be doing one for each quarter. All right. Number 2, students are for B. Students must explain how prokaryotic cells differ from eukaryotic cells. And it says writing component. For this, that is where when I say a writing component, it's one paragraph. And it will need to be next to and with the number 1. So you're going to have a paragraph explaining the differences between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells with those two models. Think of like a plaque at a museum. When you go to a painting, there's a little description next to it. That's what I'm looking for with these. Not a full page, not 7 pages, nothing. So for each one of these, there'll be a small writing component. All right. Number 2, demonstrate the characteristics of Archaia. An Archaia cell must be present, complete with labeling. We learned that there are differences between Archaia and bacteria, and the students have to demonstrate that an Archaia is essentially different from a bacteria. All right, and then for the writing component, students must explain how our Archaia are unique from bacteria. So they'll have to be able to do that. For that, like maybe 3 sentences. Doesn't have to be a full paragraph. Number 3, demonstrate the characteristics of a bacteria cell. All labeling of the bacteria cell must be present. Students must also explain the characteristics of bacteria. So, for this one, they're going to need a separate, just a separate eukaryotic bacteria cell. So I'm going to need a bacteria cell specifically. The first one was a eukaryotic or prokaryotic cell. Those are a generic term. I need a bacteria for this one. We learned about different types of bacteria. They can choose one and just make a diagram. Again, no smaller than like this. All right, you should be able to, what is that, a Big Mac. Yeah, like a Big Mac. Think of that. No smaller than that. Any smaller, they won't be able to do it. And then they'll need a characteristics of bacteria explanation. So we learned there's a list of characteristics that make bacteria bacteria. I need to see all of those present. Number 4, students must demonstrate how bacteria reproduce. Specifically, they must demonstrate binary fission. I want binary fission. I need all the steps. All steps must be present, and an explanation of each step must be present. So we learned about binary fission when we learned about bacteria. Your students have to demonstrate each step. There are 5 steps in binary fission, and I need to see all 5 of those steps clearly labeled. Number 5, students must diagram a virus, complete with labeling. Students can choose 1 to 3 basic virus types to diagram. So for this, we learned there's different types of viruses. They can choose 1, and I need complete labeling. Now the thing is, between you and me, viruses are very simple. There's only a set number of parts of a virus. There's like 3. So this is probably the simplest ones. But again, no smaller than a Big Mac. If there's any smaller than that, then they weren't able to actually demonstrate that they understand what a virus looks like. Number 6, students must demonstrate how a virus cell duplicates. All steps must be present and labeled. Students must also explain the characteristics of a virus. I'll get that in a second. We learned there's a specific cycle called the lytic cycle, how a virus duplicates itself. They're going to need to demonstrate all 4 steps of that lytic cycle. And we saw several different demonstrations about that. We watched a Bill and I video. I created one in class. They created their own. So I need them to demonstrate that they understand what the lytic cycle is. And then each step, it says all steps must be present and an explanation of each step. For each step, I need at least a 3-sentence explanation of what's going on. What's going on to the virus? What's going on to the host cell? I need to see that. Alright, let's see. Yep, and then separate to that, so after they create their diagram with all the steps labeled, I need listed the characteristics of a virus. There's a whole set, and I need all those characteristics of a virus. So it can be bulletin format, it can be sentence format, I don't care. But that's what I need to see. So that's for lesson 1. Let's go to lesson 2, protists and fungi. Number 1. Students must demonstrate the characteristics of the kingdom Protista. Students must explain that protists are eukaryotic organisms that have membrane-bound organelles and demonstrate how they move. So, I need to see a protist for that one. Their diagram they're going to make is a protist. Again, Big Mac. No smaller than that. And I need it labeled. And part of their writing, they need to pretty much give me the characteristics of protists. What they are, what kind of cells they are. They basically need to demonstrate they understand what a protist is. Number 2, students must demonstrate how protists reproduce. Students must explain how they can produce asexually and sexually. So there's 2 things they have to do for this one. They have to show asexual reproduction of a protist, and there's 2 to 4 different types, and they can choose 1. So they must choose 1 of those and demonstrate it in its complete form. I have to see step by step, I have to see each step labeled, just like they did for binary fission. Then there's also sexual reproduction, and I need to see that as well. Exact same formatting. I need to see that as well. Number 3, students must demonstrate the different types of protists. All labeling of each type of protist must be present. Must demonstrate the 3. Plant, animal, and fungus. Students must explain how each type ingests food. So let's go over this one real quick. So there's 3 different types of protists. For each one, they're going to have their own little 3D tangible diagram. I need to see a plant fungus, an animal fungus, or a plant protist, an animal protist, and a fungus protist. I need to see all 3 of those. Each one of those must be labeled completely. And then, next to that, on their little plaque that we discussed earlier, they must explain how each type, plant, animal, and fungus protist, ingest food. And finally, number 4, students must demonstrate the 5 types of fungus. All diagrams must be fully labeled. Students must explain how each of the 5 types of fungi reproduce and obtain food. Again, we learned about the different types of fungus. There's 5 different types. We learned all about these in class. They need to demonstrate each one separately. Again, Big Mac, I need to see those. And each one have to be fully labeled. So I need to see any part of the diagram they have to label. I don't want to give it away, but they have to be able to diagram the different types of protists. And on that writing component, I need them to describe how each of the 5 reproduce and obtain food. Some of these, they may reproduce both sexually and sexually. I have to see that. I have to see how they also obtain food. that is the entire project outline. It took me approximately 10 minutes to read the entire thing to you and explain what it is. Hopefully I did a good job. If not, please respond to me and I can help you out any more. Again, they don't have to spend an exuberant amount of time on this. They just have to put a lot of effort into it. Thanks.